The first time my daughter-in-law called me a freeloader, my left hand was reaching across a chipped Formica counter for a small white coffee cup. Black, no sugar, $2.89. The diner on the corner of Main and 4th in Cedar Falls, Iowa, where I have been going 4 mornings a week since I came back from the Gulf in 1991. Diane was sitting across from me in the green vinyl booth. Daniel, my son, was next to her, sliding a paper napkin into a square. Our waitress, Rita, had just set the cup down in front of me. The coffee was hot. The spoon was still on the saucer. Diane held out the check toward me. Not toward herself. Not toward Daniel. Toward me. She held it by one corner between her thumb and her index finger, like it had something on it. "Dad," she said, "you really should start covering your own breakfast." She smiled when she said it. That was the part that always got me later. She smiled. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I looked at the cup. I looked at the check. Then I said the only thing I could think of to say. "I understand. Thank you." I paid the bill in cash. I left Rita at 20 and told her to keep the change. I put a 5 on the counter the way I always do. I walked out to my truck, the 2003 Ford F-150 with the dent in the driver's door, and 248,000 miles on it. I sat in the cab for 11 minutes. I did not start the engine. I just held the steering wheel. I looked at the watch on my left wrist, the olive drab field watch I have worn since Kuwait, the one whose caseback reads 6 words in my dead wife's handwriting. Let me say who I am, plainly, the way I would say it to a man across a card table. My full name is David Aaron Whitfield. I am 68 years old. I served 31 years in the United States Army as an infantry officer. I am a retired full-bird colonel. I hold a combat infantryman badge with 1 star and a bronze star with a V device for valor. My DD-214 lists 3 deployments: Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and the 2nd tour in Iraq. I retired with honors at Fort Bragg in 2014. My pension from the Department of Defense is $41,200 a month before taxes, plus full medical, plus a survivor benefit for Maggie that I will draw down only when I am dead. But here's the part nobody in Cedar Falls knows, and that is the part Diane did not know when she slid that check across at me. I am a self-made real estate investor. I started buying duplexes in 1995 with the $14,000 in savings I had after Maggie paid off our last medical bill. Maggie handled the books. I handled the drive-arounds. By the time Maggie passed in 2019, my company, Whitfield Holdings LLC, owned 14 single-family rentals, 2 small apartment buildings, a 40-acre hayfield that leases to a local farmer for $9,600 a year, and, sitting quietly in a fireproof box at the First National Bank of Waterloo, the deed to the 4-bedroom farmhouse on 6 acres at 1148 Old Mill Road, where my son Daniel and his family have lived rent-free for the past 11 years. The house is in my name. The land is in my name. The mortgage has been paid off since 2008. No one knew about any of it except Maggie. And after Maggie passed, no one knew except my attorney, Tom Beyer, and my accountant, an old Army buddy named George Petrov. I hid all of it on purpose. I want to be clear about that. Maggie and I sat at our kitchen table in 2002, the year Daniel brought Diane home for the first time. And she said to me, "David, let people believe you have nothing. The loudest ones in the room are usually the most afraid. If they ever find out what we are, they will love us for the wrong reason. And that kind of love does not survive a winter." I have lived by that sentence for 23 years. I drove Daniel's children, my grandchildren, to school in the dented Ford. I wore the same olive drab field watch I wore in Kuwait. I paid for everything I needed in cash. I tipped like a man who had about $300 left in the world. None of it was a performance. Most of it was just me, doing what Maggie asked me to do. Let me tell you about my son, because he is not the villain of this story. Daniel just did not know how to fight his wife without losing his family. I understood that. I have seen it in 100 mess halls. The easiest man to push is the one who is afraid of being alone. Daniel is 41. He works as a mid-level accountant at a firm in Waterloo that processes payroll for grain elevators. He makes $74,000 a year. He is good with numbers. He is not good with people. He has a kind face and a soft voice. Maggie used to say he had Maggie's left ear and my left foot. Both of those are true. He and Diane met at a church picnic in 2012, married in 2013. They moved into the farmhouse in 2014, the year I left the Army, because I told Daniel I was retiring, and that the house was sitting empty, and that he and his new bride could use it while they got on their feet. I did not charge them rent. I did not charge them utilities. I did not charge them property tax. The lights were on, the heat worked, the roof was new, the well pump was new in 2011. The water heater was new in 2017. I paid for all of it from Maggie's checking account at the credit union on University Avenue. For 11 years I have eaten Sunday dinner at that house. I have driven my grandchildren, Sam and Ruth, to soccer practice in the same dented truck. I have sat in the second best chair in the living room. Daniel gets the big one. I am dad, so I get the one by the bookshelf. And I have eaten Maggie's pot roast recipe that Diane now makes, badly, every third Sunday. And for 11 years I have listened. Diane's father, Harold, lost his plumbing business in Cedar Rapids in 2008 when the housing market collapsed. He had borrowed against the shop. The bank took the building. He took his own life in 2011. Diane was 26. Daniel told me this on the phone one night, and I said the only thing I knew to say. That explains a lot, I said. It did explain a lot. It explained why Diane checks the bank statements twice a month. It explained why she tracks every grocery receipt in a binder on the counter. It explained why she always pays the bill first when we go out. She is not cruel in the way a story needs a villain to be cruel. She is scared. She has watched her father lose a business and then lose himself. She decided, very early, that she would never be that woman. She decided the safest place to be is in charge of the money. That fear is real. That fear is sympathetic. But fear is not an alibi, and a wife's fear is not a man's money, and it is not his name on a piece of paper in a fireproof box. And I am going to need you, the listener, to understand both of those things at the same time. That I loved Diane even as she did what she did, and that I had to stop her anyway. Let me tell you about the small things. In the spring of last year, Diane started bringing a leather coin purse to Thanksgiving dinner. Then she started asking on the way out whether I had remembered to refill my spare tank on the truck. Then she suggested, on a Tuesday in February, that I might want to move into a nice little one-bedroom near the post office, so I would not have to climb the stairs to my apartment over the laundry. That was the third time she had used the word stairs in a single sentence. I started listening. In March, I noticed she had taken the spare house key off the ring by the kitchen door and replaced it with a keychain that had a small leather tag on it that read, in her tidy handwriting, DKWS 148. Those are the initials of Daniel, her, and their kids. She had marked my house with their initials. I did not say a word about it. I went home to my apartment. I poured a bourbon. I drank it on the porch. In April, 3 months before the coffee, the second thing happened. I went to buy a new pair of work boots at the Shields in Waterloo. $149.99. I went to pay cash. I almost always pay cash. But the line was long, and the cashier said they preferred a card. I pulled out my Visa. The little girl behind the register, Kim, was maybe 19, and she swiped it, and her face changed. She looked up at me. "I'm sorry, sir," she said. "It says declined." I said, "Run it again." She ran it again. Declined. "Try the chip," I said. She tried the chip. Declined. I looked at the card. It was the right card. It was mine. The name was right. The number was right. I had paid with this card at the same store 6 weeks earlier for a new jacket. I had paid my property taxes with this card in January. I had paid for Daniel's car insurance with this card in February. Someone had lowered the limit. Someone had called the bank. I paid cash for the boots. I drove home in the truck. I did not say a word to Daniel. I did not say a word to Diane. I called Tom Byer from the truck, 3 blocks from the house, on Maggie's old flip phone I keep in the glove box. "Tom," I said, "I need you to check something for me." "What is it, David?" "Somebody has been calling my bank. I want to know who." Tom paused. Tom always pauses for one beat before he answers anything important in his career of 41 years of estate law. "I will call you back in 20 minutes, he said. He called back in 19. "David," he said, "your limit was reduced from $50,000 to $2,000 on April 2. The call was logged to the home number at 1148 Old Mill Road. The authorized voice was listed as D. Whitfield Sanders." "That is the young lady?" "Yes," I said. "David, is there anything else I should look at?" "Look at the deed," I said, "and pull the title history, and pull the last 5 years of property tax records." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said the thing Tom Byer always says when he knows something is going to hurt. "David, are you alone?" Yes. Okay, sit down, even though you are sitting. Look out a window. I am going to tell you what I found. Go ahead, Tom. In February, he said, a refinance application was filed on the farmhouse on your behalf, but it was not signed by you. The signature on page 3 is forged. It looks close, but it isn't yours. I know your signature. I have seen it for 32 years. The application listed income from a job you don't have, at an address you don't live at, and asked for a cash out of $240,000. The application was denied on April 9th. The reason was, identity cannot be confirmed on file, but the attempt was logged with the county recorder. If she had gotten through with it, she could have walked into a title office 3 weeks later and walked out with a check. I did not say anything for a long time. David, he said, I'm sorry, buddy. How much do I owe you, Tom? Shut up, David. We hung up. I sat in the truck. I held the steering wheel. I looked at the watch. The minutes on the face went by, the way they always did. The only thing that does. On the back of the watch, in Maggie's handwriting, scratched into the steel, with a Swiss Army knife in 1991 before I shipped out, were 6 words. For David, keep your time honest. M. I read them twice. I started the engine. I drove home. I want to tell you what happened in Tom's office the next Tuesday, because this is the part I want you to hear slowly. Tom's office smells like leather. Tom has always smelled like leather. He sits behind a desk that was his father's desk. He has a yellow legal pad he has used since 1989. He has a brass desk lamp that doesn't work, but he turned it on every day for 31 years out of habit until I told him to stop wasting his money on the bulb. He poured me a coffee. Diner mug, black, no sugar. David, he said, you have 2 paths. Tell me both. Path 1, you confront Diane. You do it now. You do it at the kitchen table, with Daniel there, and you show them the documents, and you tell them what she did. You file a police report. You evict them. You let the anger out. And what does path 1 get me? It gets you 1 loud conversation, and then a year of sideways looks across the dinner table. It gets you Sam and Ruth caught between their father and their grandfather. It gets you a marriage either saved by your anger or destroyed by it. There is no middle. And path 2? Path 2. You do nothing. You let her think it worked. You let her think the application just got denied for some dumb clerical reason. You let her think nothing happened. People get careless once they think they've already won. They make another move. They slip. They leave another fingerprint. They call another number. And then, when you have the whole picture, you do it once. Do it right. Do it with witnesses. And do it forever. Why would I do that, Tom? Because path 2 gets you the truth. Path 2 gets you the documents. Path 2 gets you a structure that Daniel and those 2 grandchildren can live inside of for the next 40 years without you having to stand guard. I want to draft you a new estate plan. I want to set up a trust. I want to set up a scholarship. I want to do it while she thinks she still has time. I looked at Tom for a long time. Maggie, I said, would have done path 2. Yes, Tom said, she would have. I went home that night and I played along. I went to Sunday dinner. I ate the pot roast. I told Diane the boots were a little stiff, but they were breaking in. I asked Ruth about her science project. I asked Sam how wrestling was going. I poured my own coffee. I cleared my own plate. That was the rule. I did not ask Diane for anything. I did not suggest dinner. I did not bring groceries. I did not leave cash on the counter. I did not drive anywhere with Daniel. I did not stop being a grandfather. I did not stop being a father. I did not stop being a friend. I just stopped being an open door. In May, Tom filed a quiet amendment to my will, witnessed by Diane's uncle Roger, who is also our neighbor and a notary. Tom filed a quiet trust for Daniel's children, Sam, age 10, and Ruth, age 7, structured so that Diane can never be the trustee. Tom filed a quiet scholarship in Maggie's name at the University of Northern Iowa for first-generation college students from rural counties in Iowa. The seed money was $410,000. The annual payout was set at $18,000 a year, renewable for 4 years, for 1 student every fall. Maggie's name is on it. Maggie's maiden name is on it. Margaret Ann Whitfield, née Schroeder. In June, Tom called George Petrov, my accountant, and pulled the last 3 years of statements on every account Whitfield Holdings LLC owns. We discovered 2 more things. The first, in March, Diane had opened a new savings account at the credit union in joint names with Daniel funded with $5,200 that she had moved out of a small personal allowance account I had set up for Daniel's children, money I sent every quarter for Sam's braces and Ruth's dance lessons. She had moved it, in $400 increments, into the joint account she controlled. She did not steal it. She moved it. The second, she had applied for a home equity line of credit on the farmhouse in April, in her own name, claiming she was the homeowner. The application was denied for the same reason as the refinance. The title wasn't hers, but the application was logged. Tom laid out the 3 documents on his desk. 1, he said. 2, 3. He looked at me. David, he said, do you want to do this at my office, or do you want to do it at the house? The house, I said. Why? Because if I do it at my office, she will say I trapped her. If I do it at her table, with my grandchildren's faces in the room, she cannot say that. And Daniel cannot look away. Okay, Tom said. When? Sunday, I said. The next one. The 3rd of June. Who do you want there? You, George, the notary uncle, and me. What about Daniel? He will be there. He is always there. I want to walk you through the next 3 weeks. Not because they were brave. They were the opposite of brave. They were quiet in the worst kind of way. Those 3 weeks were the loneliest 3 weeks of my life. I went to the diner. I sat in the same booth. I paid $2.89 for the coffee. I left 5. I drove home in the truck. I did not go to 1148 Old Mill Road for any reason except to pick up Sam for a baseball game in Waterloo. I did not call Diane. I did not call Daniel. I did not speak to either of them about the house or the bank or the deed. I talked to my grandchildren about their school projects. I talked to Rita at the diner about her grandson at Iowa State, who is in his 2nd year of mechanical engineering. I talked to Tom on Tuesdays. I talked to George on Thursdays. I talked to Maggie in the only place I could still find her, which was at the cemetery on the south side of town, next to the stone that reads Margaret Ann Whitfield, beloved wife, 1949 to 2019. I sat on the grass by her stone and I said the things I would have said at the kitchen table. Maggie, I said, I am about to do the hard thing. I said it 3 times that week. I did not hear anything back. I did not expect to. George called me on Thursday of the 2nd week. David, he said, I went back through the LLC filings, and she has been on the Whitfield Holdings website. She logged in on April 14th. The login was unsuccessful. Wrong password. 3 attempts blocked. But she tried. I pulled the IP trace with our IT guy, a retired signal officer named Chuck Rogers. The IP came from the home Wi-Fi at Old Mill Road. George, I said, what was her guess? Whitfield 1918. I laughed. That was the year Maggie's father came home from France. That was the year on Maggie's wedding ring. She had tried the year my wife was born. She had been digging. Anything else? I asked. One more thing, he said. Yesterday morning she called the county recorder's office in Black Hawk County and asked, and I quote, what the procedure is to file a quitclaim deed when the owner is hospitalized. The clerk told her she needed a notarized signature and 2 witnesses, and quote, a medical note establishing incapacity. She said thank you and hung up. I was quiet. David, he said. Yes. She is not done. I know. You have to do this Sunday. I am doing it Sunday, George. Are you scared? Yes. Good, he said. If you weren't scared, you wouldn't have lasted as long as you lasted. That was George. On Friday of the 2nd week, Tom called me after lunch. David, he said, I have one more piece of news, and it is the piece I have been dreading telling you. Go ahead. She called the assisted living facility in Cedar Falls, the one on 27th Street. She asked about the rates for a long-term single occupancy. She asked about the medical intake process. She asked about the waiting list. The administrator, Beth, called me. Beth is a friend of mine. Beth told me she asked about a Colonel Whitfield, quote unquote. I closed my eyes. How long ago, I asked? Yesterday. Was I at the diner yesterday? Yes. Did anybody see me there? Yes. Does she know? I don't know, David. She might just be doing the math. Thank you for telling me. David, are you sure you want to do this at the house? Yes. It will be ugly. Yes. But ugly is better than slow. That was Tom. Sunday. I will tell you the dinner the way it happened. I arrived at 5:45. I brought nothing except the field watch on my wrist and the folder Tom had handed me that afternoon in his office. The folder was thin. It had 3 documents in it: the refinance, the home equity line, the The quit-claim inquiry. Diane had made lasagna. She was setting the table. Daniel was carving bread. Sam and Ruth were at the kitchen island doing homework. I sat in the second-best chair. Tom sat in the third chair. George sat in the fourth chair. Roger, Diane's uncle, who is a notary and the only neighbor we have in common, sat in the fifth. He was wearing a flannel shirt and had a post-it note in his shirt pocket with the time of his daughter's soccer game on it. That was the room. Diane came in from the kitchen carrying the casserole. "Oh," she said, "you brought friends." "They are not friends," I said. "They are advisors." "What is this about, Dad?" "Sit down," I said. She set the casserole down. She pulled out her chair. She sat. Daniel looked at Tom. Tom looked at me. I opened the folder. "This," I said, "is a refinance application filed on February 14th at the Black Hawk County Recorder's Office. It lists this house as collateral. It lists me as the applicant. The signature on page 3 is not mine. The income source on page 7 is not mine. The cash-out amount is $240,000. The application was denied on April 9th. Silence. "This," I said, "is a home equity line of credit application filed in Diane's name on April 22 at the First National Bank of Waterloo. It lists this house as collateral. The title wasn't hers, so it was denied. The attempt was logged." Silence. "This," I said, "is a public records inquiry logged by the Black Hawk County Recorder's Office on June 1, asking what the procedure is to file a quitclaim deed on this property when the owner is hospitalized." I set the folder down. "Daniel," I said, "I love you." He didn't say anything. "Diane," I said, "the house is in my name. The land is in my name. The mortgage has been paid off since 2008. I have never put it in your name, and I am not going to put it in your name. You tried 3 times to take it." She opened her mouth. "Don't," I said. "Don't tell me why. I already know why. Your father lost his shop in 2008. He died in 2011. You are afraid. That fear is real. That fear is allowed in this family." I looked at Tom. Tom nodded. "Tom," I said. Tom pulled out a second folder. This one was thicker. "This," he said, "is a new estate plan, signed by David Whitfield, witnessed by myself and by Roger here as notary, and filed with the Black Hawk County Probate Court this afternoon at 4:12 p.m. He laid out 3 documents. "The first," he said, "is a trust in the names of Samuel Whitfield Sanders and Ruth Whitfield Sanders. The trust is funded at $640,000 in cash and 3 rental properties. The trustee is David Whitfield. The successor trustee is Tom Byer. Diane is not the trustee. Diane is not the beneficiary of the trust. Diane is not in the trust." Diane's face was white. "The second," Tom said, "is a scholarship in the name of Margaret Ann Whitfield, née Schroeder, at the University of Northern Iowa. Seed funding is $410,000. The annual award is $18,000. 1 student per year. Renewable for 4 years. The third," Tom said, "is a quitclaim on a portion of the hayfield to Whitfield Holdings LLC to fund the scholarship in perpetuity." Silence. I looked at Diane. "I am not here to punish you," I said. "I am here to make sure my grandchildren grow up in a house that nobody can take from them while they are still children. I am here to make sure their grandmother's name lives in this town long after I am gone. Those are the only 2 things I owe them." "Diane," I said, "say it." She said nothing. "Say what you did," I said. She looked at Daniel. Daniel did not look at her. "I tried to take the house," she said. "Why?" "Because I was afraid we would lose everything." "Who taught you to be afraid like that?" "My father," she said. "Nothing else?" "No." I sat back in the chair. "I forgive you," I said. "I am not saying that to make it small. I am saying it because Maggie taught me that resentment is the only inheritance a man can give his grandchildren that they can't undo. I do not want my grandchildren to inherit resentment, so I am letting it go, here, at this table, in front of the people who will remember it." I looked at Daniel. "Daniel," I said, "are you all right?" He said, "No." "Are you going to be?" "I think so." "Look at me." He looked at me. "Your wife just told the truth. That is the hardest thing a person can do at a table. Whatever happens next, remember that she did it. Remember she did it in front of her uncle. Remember she did it in front of your children." He nodded. I looked at my grandchildren. "Sam," I said. "Ruth." "Yes, Grandpa. Your grandmother's name is on a scholarship now. When you are older, I will take you to meet the first student who wins it. Her name will be Maggie." Okay, Grandpa, Ruth said. That was the meeting. It ended at 6:40 p.m. Tom and George left. Roger left. Daniel cleared the table. Diane did not speak for the rest of the night. I sat in the second-best chair in the living room. I read 2 chapters of a Louis L'Amour novel. I drank water. At 8:15 p.m., I put on my coat. I drove home in the truck. I said nothing about it for the next 11 days. Then Diane called, on a Tuesday at 9:12 a.m. David, she said, I want to apologize. I know you do. I don't know how to do it right. Just keep going, I said. I tried to take your house. Yes. I forged a signature. Yes. I called the county recorder and asked how to take it from you when you were sick. Yes. Why didn't you hate me? Because hating you wouldn't bring Maggie back. She was quiet for a long time. What do I do now? She asked. You call me on Tuesdays. Okay. And you ask Sam and Ruth about their day. Not as a question you already know the answer to, as a question you don't know. I will. And you show up. That's it. You just show up. Okay, David. I forgive you, Diane. Thank you. We hung up. The next Tuesday she called at 9:14 a.m. The Tuesday after that, 9:13 a.m. The Tuesday after that, 9:11 a.m. She has called every Tuesday at approximately 9:12 a.m. for 19 weeks. Let me tell you what she has done, not because I am keeping score, but because she should be remembered for what she did after the meeting, not for what she did before. In July, she drove Sam to his baseball game in her own car. He missed a fly ball down the left field line in the bottom of the third. She did not say a word on the way home. She bought him a Gatorade at the gas station on Ridgeway Avenue. In July, she sat on the porch with Ruth and helped her with her reading for 45 minutes without checking her phone. Not once. In August, she repainted the mailbox at the end of the driveway without being asked. She did it on a Saturday. She did not call me to tell me. I drove past on Sunday morning on my way to church, and the mailbox was blue. Blue was the color Maggie wanted. In August, she put a small white envelope in my mailbox with a $20 bill and a note that read, "For the next coffee at Rita's. I am sorry about the last one. Diane." In September, she asked me if I wanted to come to dinner on Sunday. I said yes. I went. I sat in the second-best chair. She made pot roast, the way Maggie made it. The salt was right. The carrots were right. The bay leaf was right. The broth was close. It was not Maggie's broth. It was not going to be Maggie's broth, but it was closer. I said, "Did Maggie teach you that one?" She said, "I looked it up." I said, "It's close." She said, "I will keep trying." I said, "Good." In September, Daniel called me on a Wednesday. He had never called me on a Wednesday in his life. "Dad," he said. "Yes, Daniel. I want to thank you." "For what?" "For not blowing up the house. For not blowing up the marriage. For letting Diane tell it herself, in front of me, instead of behind my back." "You're welcome, son. Are you okay?" "Yes." "Are you eating?" "Yes." "Are you sleeping?" "Yes." "Are you wearing that same coat?" I looked down at the coat. "Yes." "Okay, Dad. I love you. I love you, Daniel." We hung up. In October, Tom and I drove to the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls. It is 23 miles from my house. We parked in the visitor lot. We walked into the financial aid office. We signed the final paperwork on the Margaret Ann Whitfield Scholarship. The director of financial aid, a woman named Erica, shook my hand. She said, "Colonel Whitfield, on behalf of the Whitfield family, thank you. The first recipient will be a young woman from Clayton County, a first-generation student, single mother of 1, GPA 3.7, working part-time at a grocery store in Elkader. Her name is Kara." I said. "Where does she work?" Erica said, "Hartig Drug." I said, "How much does she make?" Erica said, $14.85 an hour. I said, "Put her on the phone." Erica did. I said, "Kara, this is David Whitfield. I want you to know who is paying for this. Your scholarship is in the name of a woman named Margaret Ann Whitfield. She was born in 1949 in Strawberry Point, Iowa. She raised 3 boys in this state. She never went to college herself. She wanted to. She told me in 1994, on a Tuesday, by the kitchen window, looking out at her tomato garden, that the thing she regretted most in her life was that she didn't finish her degree. So I am finishing it for her, through you." Kara was quiet. "Sir," she said finally, "I will not let her down. I know you won't." We hung up. Tom drove me home. We parked in my driveway. We did not say anything for about 3 minutes. Then Tom said, "David." "Yes." "Maggie would have liked the girl at the pharmacy." "Yes, she would have." "You did good." "Thank you, Tom." Then he said the sentence that I have thought about every day since. "David," he said, "the point was never the punishment. The point was the structure. You built a structure that doesn't need you to be angry. That's better than anything I could have filed." I nodded. We sat in the driveway for 10 more minutes. Then he drove away. I sat in the truck for another 5. I looked at the watch. "For David, keep your time honest. M." I went inside. I poured myself a bourbon. I drank it on the porch. The leaves were turning. Now I want to tell you what happened at the diner last Tuesday. I drove to the diner at 6:32 a.m. I parked the truck. I walked in. I sat at the counter, not in the booth, because the booth was taken. Rita poured me a black coffee in the small white cup, $2.89. She put a spoon on the saucer. I reached into my pocket for the $5 I always leave. A hand came over my shoulder and set a $5 on the counter before I could. I turned around. It was Diane. She was wearing a green coat I had never seen. She was holding a paper cup of her own, with a lid on it, on her way to work. She had been at the gym. She smelled like soap. "Hey, Dad," she said. "Hey, Diane. I have this one," she said. "You don't have to." "I know I don't. I want to." I looked at the cup. I looked at her. "I understand. Thank you," I said. Same words as the first time, but they mean something different now. She nodded. She left. Rita looked at me. "Is that your daughter?" she asked. "That is my daughter," I said. "She comes in here a lot lately." "I know. You want a refill?" "Yes, please." She poured the coffee. The cup was warm. The spoon was on the saucer. I reached for it. I looked down at my wrist. The watch was there. The case back with Maggie's 6 words. "For David, keep your time honest. M." I sat at the counter. I drank the coffee. I left 5 of my own for Rita. I walked out to the truck. I started the engine. I drove home. Let me close the loop with the words I owe you. I am David Whitfield. I am 68 years old. I am a retired colonel. I own 14 rentals, 2 apartment buildings, a 40-acre hayfield, a 6-acre farmhouse on Old Mill Road, and a scholarship in my wife's name at the University of Northern Iowa. I have $2.7 million in net assets across 4 institutions, plus the pension. I have a $640,000 trust for my grandchildren. I have a daughter-in-law who calls me on Tuesdays at 9:12 a.m. I wear the same olive drab field watch I wore in Kuwait. I drive the same 2003 Ford F-150. I drink the same $2.89 cup of coffee at the same diner. I am the same man I was when this story began, but the family is not. Let me say the one thing Maggie left me with, in the only way I know how to say it. Character is not proven in one conversation. Character is proven in what you do after no one's watching. When the cameras are off, when the apology is over, when the Tuesday calls feel like they will never end, when the pot roast is still wrong, when the watch ticks past another ordinary minute, that is where it is proven. Diane has shown up 19 Tuesdays in a row. She has not missed one. That is not redemption. Redemption is too big a word for 19 phone calls. That is something smaller. That is something truer. That is what it looks like when a person decides, in the quiet, with nobody watching, to be a little bit better than they were the day before. I have decided, in the quiet, with nobody watching, to let her. If you have ever sat across from a person you love who has not yet understood what they have done, if you have ever been the grandfather in the dented truck, if you have ever been the mother-in-law with the small white envelope in the mailbox, if you have ever been the son who could not look away from the table, this story is for you. Love that respects a person's dignity is the only love that lasts a family. If this story helped you, share it with someone who is sitting in their truck right now, with both hands on the wheel, trying to figure out what to do next. Leave me a comment. Tell me about a Tuesday that mattered. Subscribe if you want to be here for the next one. I'll see you at the counter. Colonel Whitfield, out.